everybody, and away we go with another edition of the Stampede Wrestling Show.
Welcome back to Heartbeat Radio. We're going to have a great show for you this evening. First of all, I'd like to introduce the legend Bruce Hart. Bruce.
Ole was one of the really main players back in the day. He was, one of the most successful and most respected bookers in the business. It's funny, a lot of the guys that were successful in the business, my dad would be very proud, and he would be saying, I broke him in, and you were one of those guys that he always used to, drop your name, or I broke Ole in and all like that. And it's funny, my dad had another old guy back here in the early, maybe 61 or something like that, named Gene Anderson, and he was just kind of a jobber up here, but a nice guy. And my dad was intrigued how many guys went on to become supposed brothers of Gene or whatever, including yourself and I guess Larry Hynemy or Lars.
Larry Hynemy, yeah.
Yeah, and old Marty Lundy with Arn Anderson. And my dad had this other old fart back here in the early 60s. You probably knew of him. He's kind of on the downside when he was up here, but I think Dr. Jerry Graham. And my dad was always intrigued that all these people would see fit to name themselves after Dr. Jerry, because Jerry wasn't exactly a saint or a role model or anything. But yeah, I'm glad to have you on, Ole. Maybe just you could fill us in a little bit about some of your early stuff. After you got started with Vernon, you worked some of the territories. When did you finally head down south? That's where you kind of got your so-called break.
When I left your dad, I gave him the notice. I was only there probably. In fact, you probably know how long I was there. I don't remember anymore. I think I was there maybe a month or 2 months. I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember it was a short stint, maybe in '68.
Yeah, it was.
Something.
And then you remember Lars Anderson?
Yeah,
Larry Hynemy.
Yeah.
He and Gene were down there in Carolinas, and he called me and he said, "Listen, you want to make some money?" I said, "Yeah. What the hell else am I supposed to do in this damn business?" And he said, "Well, come on down here. You'll make money." I said, "Well, where am I making this money?" He said, "You come on down here with me and Gene, and we'll be the Minnesota Wrecking Crew." Well, I didn't know any idea. I had no idea what the hell that was all about. But anyway, so I drove down to Carolinas. And the thing that bothered me, or the thing that I didn't understand, is Lars worked here for the summer, and he left to go back up to Minnesota. He wanted to be a star in Minnesota. I stayed here. I didn't know if I was going to be with Gene or what I was going to do. And I said, "Gene, what do you think you want to do?" And he said, "Well, if you want to wrestle with me, I'll wrestle with you. That'll be all right." And I said, "Okay, come on." So we just stayed as the Andersons with Gene. And he was right. We made money. We made a lot of money down there. And your dad called me, as a matter of fact, in the fall of that year, I think it was. And he said, "Listen, I'd like to have you come down here again, and I'll guarantee you $1,000 a week." I said, "Thank you very much, Stu, but I'm already busy doing what I'm doing."
Yeah, I know my dad always spoke well of you after that. And he was sort of like some junior hockey coach or something. He always took a lot of pride in the guys who seemed to make it, as they say, And but when did you first get your feet into the booking end of it, Ole? You were teaming
19, with. I got to think about it for a minute. When I came down to Carolinas, I went down. From there, I went to Georgia, where I'm at now. I've been here all my life. And the guy that ran the whole damn thing was a guy named Jim Barnett.
Oh, Jimsy, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, Jimsy. And
was he
hired Gene and I.
That was after Paul Jones and that bunch. I used to just hear the names, and my dad. They're all part of the so-called NWA at that time, and you'd hear about some of the guys like Fred Ward and Paul Jones. They were like old guys.
Well, Fred Ward was a promoter.
Yeah, and I didn't know how Jimsy had been in Australia.
He left Australia to come here.
Yeah, that must have been mid-'70s, something like that.
I'm not 100% certain, but I would say in the late 60s, but maybe I'm wrong on that, too. I don't know for sure. I can't remember when I came down here. I came right here after Barnett got here. Barnett got to Georgia, whatever year it was, and I can't even remember anymore. And he hired me and Gene. And then after about 6 months, something like that, I'm not sure, he wanted to get rid of Gene. And I said, well, I guess we got to find a place to go. He says, no. He says, no, not you. It's just Gene. And he made me a hell of an offer. He said, I'll hire you, and he said, you can work for me, and I'll pay you $2,000 a week. I said, well, that's enough for me. And that
would have been a hell of a guarantee back then.
Oh, yeah, sure it was. Yeah, and, well, I made more than that from him, but anyway. And Gene just was happy. He went back to Carolinas, and he worked for George Scott, with George Scott, and Gene had some girlfriend. That's what Gene and I got sideways, because he had some damn girlfriend that he liked up in Carolinas. And here we were down in Georgia. And he was happy as hell to goddamn go back to Carolinas to be with his girlfriend she lived up in Raleigh, I think it was. It's one thing to have a girlfriend that you just bang around with, but he was crazy about this girl. And I didn't like it at all.
That was kind of what messed up a lot of guys' careers in this business was some of the girlfriends and the wives, and the wives finding out and all the other, and it seems. Oh yeah,
well,
it's kind
I
of
had girlfriends too, but I never had them in Charlotte where I lived in Charlotte. I never had anybody there. I didn't want to make it so damn close. I had girlfriends here and there, and that's all I did. I just saw them when I got up there, and that was it. If they want any more than that, forget about it. They weren't going to get any more than that from me. That was all.
Yeah.
But anyway, Gene fell in love with this girl and thought she was just wonderful and a great. In fact, the girl that he fell in love with came from Calgary. Yeah, that's his. His wife came from Calgary, but then he had these other girlfriends all over the damn world, and one in particular that was up in Raleigh, and he fell in love with her, and that was it. And the girl that he married up in Calgary, he didn't talk to her hardly at all. And he always came home late and all that bull. He told me later on, she said she knew all about it anyway. I said, well, okay.
Did you start booking with Barnett, Ole? Was that your first stint when you got into that?
Yeah. I only booked one time. Well, I booked once for Crockett too, but everything before that was all from Jim Barnett. And like I say, he paid me a couple $1,000s a week. Got to the point where he paid me $2,500 a week. I booked for him from, I don't know what year it was even. I'm all screwed up on that. But I worked for him for about 10, 11 years, I think.
That's a good run.
And then I just quit.
How was Jimsy to work for?
I never saw him. He came to the matches once in a while, and I would see him there. And after that, I went home, and I did all my booking at home. And when I got done doing my booking, I gave it to a guy that was a kid that worked for Barnett in the office. The kid was in the office all the time. I never was in that office. And the kid gave Barnett the bookings that I had, and Barnett would look at it. He'd never say nothing one way or the other. Who gave a shit? Didn't make a damn, because that's what we were doing anyway. And he went along with it. He said, fine, that's wonderful, blah, 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 blah. I hired all the guys. I fired all the guys. I did whatever I wanted to do. And if he had anything to say about it, he never said it to me anyway.
Never too many. It doesn't sound like there was too much politics then, which is.
No, there wasn't anything. I mean, it was. I hired who I wanted to hire. I kept who I wanted to keep. If I didn't like the son of a bitch, I got rid of him. That's all.
Who were some of the main guys you had back in those days? Was old Scarpa still there? Chief J?
No, he's long gone.
Long gone.
He might have been there when I first came in, but I got rid of him, and I got rid of a few people that Barnett had. I got rid of all of them. I just got rid of them. The ones I had were brand new. Well, not brand new, but they're people that hadn't been there before for the most part. I had wrestling number 2, wrestling number 1.
Did you start those guys, or were they? I remember Johnny Walker being up. He worked for my dad in maybe the 60s. He was just doing the rubber man gimmick at that time, and then.
Yeah, well, that was a shits.
Yeah, I remember he was. I think the first time I ever met him, he was chaperoning the lady wrestlers, old Johnny Walker, where they used to send up a guy like Crybaby Cannon, or somebody would chaperone the midgets and somebody chaperone.
Well, he was a dumb shit when he first started, apparently, and he did a lot of stupid stuff too. I got the idea to put him in under a mask and call him wrestling number 2.
I remember that amazing at that time because he'd just been sort of a journeyman, Johnny Walker, Rubberman Johnny Walker. Like
You're right.
You know, and for at least 10 years or more, you know, he'd been bouncing around since the late 50s, I think, and then boom, you know, Mr. Wrestling 1 was, you know, I remember Dory Funk and some of those guys coming up here and telling me they were doing great business with Johnny Walker, and I was like, wow, you know, somebody must have transformed. You know, they transformed him into this. I remember seeing pictures of Jimmy Carter, the president of the United States, with Johnny Walker, and Lillian Carter, the president's mother, and all that stuff. You know, and it's like, wow. Tim Woods came after that, I guess.
No, Tim Woods and Johnny. I put them together as a tag team.
And they both.
And they, as a tag team, Tim Wrestling number 1 and Wrestling number 2. That's how they worked as a tag team. And Johnny Walker now was forgotten. I mean, his name, forget about it. And he was just Wrestling number 2. And like I say, I didn't know too much about him before that, but he worked pretty good, I thought, and he did what he was told to do. And I just had guys, if they didn't like what I said, fire him.
Who were they mostly working with? Was that Renette or Jody and Tom Ernesto and some of those guys in there at that time, or? Well,
they weren't. No, they all. I fired all those guys.
Who did you have working with Wrestling 1 and 2 and all like that?
I got to stop and think for 5 hours because I don't remember. You know, that was 50 years ago.
That was
all I know is that we drew money. Barnett asked me. He said, "Listen, I expect you to sell out the goddamn Omni." I said, "Shit, $40,000 filled up the Omni." And that was 10,000 people, 12,000 people, I think. He was happy, and he said, "Okay, you got a job, that's all." And I didn't give a fuck anyway. I just was a guy that didn't give a damn about much of anything. And Vern is the one that sent me to your dad. And I was there for how long? I don't remember. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it was.
Did you ever?
And your dad liked.
Back?
Huh?
Did you ever go back to Vern after? Did you? How was your relationship with Vern after?
I forgot all about Vern, and Vern forgot all about me. I never went back to work for him, and that was it. I think I did for a couple of weeks. I went to a couple of shows when I quit the business back in 1970, I think. And I called him up and I said, "Listen, can I get a job for a couple of days or whatever it might be?" And he just booked me right away, and that was it. But other than that, I never went back to Vern.
How many guys started with Vern, and then Vern would send them out, guys like yourself and old Buddy Rose and Cosroe and Ric Flair, and I never saw any of them go back there. I was always intrigued. Like Flair never really went back.
We were all supposed to pay money to Vern. I never paid any money to him at all. But Ric Flair was paying him money, and I said, "Listen, don't do that. For Christ's sake, get yourself booked and be done with it." Back then, I liked Ric Flair. In fact, I'm the one that made him be world champion. Because he did the same thing every goddamn day. So I said, "No, he does it as a world champion. It's not so bad. But if he keeps doing it in the damn territory, people are going to realize that he does the same thing every goddamn night he's on wrestling." And so I suggested to Eddie Graham that we make him the world champion. And Eddie Graham said Jack Briscoe didn't want to be a champion any longer anyway. So he said, "Yeah, okay." And we made Ric Flair the world champion. Ric Flair thought he did that on his own. He was such a wonderful wrestler. Well, he wasn't worth a shit.
When was that? Late 70s, something like that, or?
Like I say, I don't remember a damn thing anymore.
Somewhere around that time, NWA seemed to start going sideways. I often wondered, you know, my dad, he'd been in the NWA since the 40s. My dad always used to have these big shows at Stampede Week. It was like the big thing. He had the champions up here since the 40s with Lou Thez and Harley and Dory and Terry and all that. And I think he told me they called him up and canceled in about 3 weeks before Stampede Week and said that I can't remember who, somebody, maybe Bill Watts or somebody needed Harley. And so my dad ended up calling Vern, and he brought Bockwinkel up as a champion, you know, and he sort of said, "Fuck the NWA" after that, you know, but it seemed to start going sideways. This was like early 80s, 81, 82, somewhere in there, and I didn't know what the hell, you know, what was going on down there.
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea of the NWA, as far as I know, was the reason that, the reason everything went to hell was because Vince McMahon was on the damn television.
I heard there was something going on where he was trying
and he was on TV all across the country, all across the world, and whatever he wanted to do was what everybody had to do, or else fuck him. And he took people out of Vern. He took people out of, where I was here in Atlanta. He hired every damn buddy he wanted to hire, and they paid him a lot of money. He offered me $1 million. I said, go fuck yourself. I thought it was full of shit. I know there was a lot of deals,
a lot of promises, and a lot of whatever that were made that were never lived up to. I know,
Well, those promises were true. From Vince McMahon, that was all correct. You remember Ronnie Garvin? He worked for him and never even did it. Had maybe one or two matches, and he made $275,000 in 1 year. They were all making money. Like I say, he offered me $1 million, and I said, what the hell is that all? I thought he was bullshit. But no, he could do it because stop and think about what he was making. He was on pay-per-view. Pay-per-view had 1 million people watching it, 2 million people watching it, and they're each paying $40 every time they watch the damn thing. He could easily give you $1 million, or $10 million, I should say.
Yeah.
So, but I was just too damn dumb and didn't realize because I didn't know about what pay-per-view was. So I made a mistake. I should have gone to work for him, but I didn't, and so what the hell? Because right after he took over, which was about 1984, I think,
somewhere
there was no business
around
for
the
anybody.
time when they kind of ran concurrently with Hogan jumping from Vern's territory and bringing all those.
Well, guess who started Hulk Hogan?
You may have. I don't know.
I did.
Yeah.
He didn't know nothing about nothing. He couldn't even wrestle. He didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. I sent him to New York.
I remember back in about maybe 79, my dad had brought this guy you may have crossed paths with up. He was booking up here for a bit, a guy named Dickie Steinborn. And Steinborn had crossed paths with Hogan and Brutus. They were called the Boulder Brothers at that time, and I think they're working for Lee Fields or somewhere in Mobile or something like that. And my dad always sort of had a penchant for these big muscular guys like Coleman and guys like that, And then it was not long after that Hogan seemed to start taking off. I think he changed his name by that time. I heard he had a bit of a run with Vince as Sterling Golden, and then I'm the one that called him Sterling Golden. Yeah, and then he worked for me for about 7 days, and I fired him. I'm not sure if he became Hulk Hogan after that, or he. Well, New York is one that named him. Vince McMahon is the one that named him Hulk Hogan. And then I think he named him Sterling Golden. From what I heard, he was not setting the world on fire initially with Vince. And he was a shit. He went up and. But Vince had all that power on that TV. He had the only pay-per-view TV at all. At first, they weren't even pushing him, and then he went. I think he kind of was working with Vern, and then he had that break with the Rocky III movie where he was doing Thunder Lips or something, and that seemed to put him back in the spotlight. Well, when Vince McMahon took over, Vern went out of business. I went out of business. Everybody, there was no business for anybody. Vince has essentially shot himself in the foot because back in the day, you would know almost all the talent was coming from those places like Atlanta and Carolina and Calgary and Amarillo and Minneapolis and Portland and all like that. And Vince never really started too many guys. He never developed any. Most of the guys, and all he would do was take Vern's guys or your guys or Stu's guys. Yeah, that's right. That's what he did. And but that put us in a damn poorhouse. Yeah, and it would have been better for the stinking WWE or F or whatever the hell they call themselves to not go out of their way to fucking kill those territories. They were no threat to whatever the hell Vince was doing in New York or wherever else, but they went out of their way to kind of kill the grassroots. Anytime anyone tells me today that business is better than ever, I would say bullshit. Full of shit, that's all. Yeah. There's, the very fact that they're having to bring guys like Sting back and they're having to bring Undertaker and all these guys, it'd be like the NFL having to bring back Brett Favre and Troy Aikman and Terry Bradshaw. It's like, where do you see the business going these days, Ole? What's your... Nothing to do with it, and I don't give a shit about it. He kicked me out of the business in 1984, and that's it. I quit, and he offered me a job. He offered me a hell of a jam. He offered me $1 million, and I said, that's a bunch of bullshit.
And I just told him that. I said, you're full of shit. And that didn't get him mad. And he came down 3 weeks in a row. He said, listen, you'll make more goddamn money than anybody ever heard of. I said, oh, go fuck yourself. What got him mad was the next couple of weeks he brought his wife down. I said, fuck her and fuck you. Oh, pardon my French if I'm talking the wrong way. And he just said that's it. He didn't want nothing to do with me anymore.
When did Barnett's so-called promotion, or when did that evolve into WCW? Or
Barnett was done in give or take 1984.
Did he get fired or did he quit? What was the deal?
No, no such thing as being fired because nobody was going to fire him. He owned everything, and that was it. He just thought it was all a bunch of. He tried to work with Vince McMahon, but Vince McMahon wasn't going to work with anybody. In fact, later on, he worked for Vince McMahon.
Oh yeah, I remember my brother Brett and Dynamite and Davey and those guys when they were all would have been like 85 or thereabouts, 86 maybe. They told me Barnett was in the office then with Vince in Connecticut or whatever the hell, you know. And
well, he went to work for Vince, and I don't know what they paid him. I have no idea. And he was happy with it apparently.
And he ended up getting.
He and I had a hell of an argument and bullshit back in 84, I think. And I just said, well, hell, pack your bag and get the fuck out of here. And that's what he did.
Yeah.
But what I didn't realize is that I was going to have to pack my bag and get the fuck out, too. So.
When did you go back then, Ole? I remember somewhere in the early 90s, my brother-in-law was working, Davey Boy, he was working for, at that time it was Turner and that bunch. It was just the early stages of that WCW. And I remember I flew down there, and it must have been around the time that Bischoff was just starting his reign of terror, or reign of error, or whatever the hell. But I think I may have seen you down there somewhere around that time. I remember when they did that abortion at the beach where they blew up a boat. That was my first exposure to all that bullshit. They had some pretty good talent, but they were, I think that was around the time when Eric was being allowed to do his, whatever the hell he was doing. And
he was a jerk.
Yeah, they had the...
He worked for Barnett. He was there when I was there. He was just a guy that did nothing. And
I
then later on he decided to take over, and that was with Vince's help. Anyway, that's when I quit, and I said, the hell with it.
I remember talking to guys like Terry Funk and Harley and some of them, and they were around at that time, and they told me that Bischoff was what they called a suit. He fit the corporate mold for Turner Broadcasting or something like that, but as far as his knowledge of wrestling and all that, he had no business.
No, he had no idea.
Were you around in those days, Ole, with Bischoff and all like that, or what was? I could never figure out how that.
I just said the hell with it, and I didn't have nothing to do with it. Bischoff was an asshole. I knew that, and that was it. And what he did was his own damn business, and like I say, I didn't have anything to do with it. He was just a job. He wasn't anything. He was nothing.
Yeah,
he got
that was the comment.
In a position where he thought he knew what the hell he was doing, and he told everybody he knew what he was doing, and pretty soon some people believed him.
What were some of the secrets, Ole, that you found worked best for you when you were booking those guys? Because you had a pretty long and successful stretch in WCW and in Georgia there.
If the guy wasn't worth a shit, I just told him he wasn't worth a shit, and I got rid of the bastard, that's all. You know, I looked at Silver Golden, what do they call him? Hulk Hogan, anyway.
Oh, yeah, Hogan, Hulk. Yeah.
I looked at him for goddamn about 1 week, 7 days. And I said, my God, that guy is the shits. The guy that told me how wonderful he was Gary Hart. And Gary knew everybody about everything. And so anyway. So I listened to Gary Hart, and Hulk Hogan drove up from where the hell ever he was, down somewhere in the Carolina, or in Texas, I think. And he came up, and I said, okay, I'll put you to work. I called him Sterling Golden, and he was the shits. If I'd have called him anything else, he still would have been the shits.
Were any of those other guys running, like Briscoes and them, were they part of that? Or I thought they had a fair
worked for me, or Barnett, or however you want to say it. Jack was a good wrestler.
Yeah,
that was
he was the champion for a couple of years there. And,
yeah, well, that was it. He wasn't worth a shit as far as I was concerned. But to be the champion was okay because they had the same damn match in San Francisco, had the same match in Las Vegas, Nevada, and had the same match in
Portland,
Washington. and nobody would know it was the same match.
Yeah, you could do that.
So I didn't give a shit what they did. But to work for me in the damn territory was the shits because they had the same match every night. And they didn't know how to draw any goddamn money. And Jack was a pretty good wrestler. He was an amateur champion. Anyway, I did a bunch of shit. I didn't like it, and I just said, well, fuck it then. What do you want to do? He's going to kick my ass. I said, well, good luck. So anyway, it's just one of those things. I must have had a fight with everybody in the whole world. Everybody thought I was a real asshole. Well, yeah, maybe I was. But I ran it, and Barnett liked it, and that was all I gave a shit about.
I was going to ask you about some of those other guys that were in there. I heard you were one of the main guys who started Hawk and Animal, or the Road Warriors back then.
I'm the only guy that started them.
How did
they came down here from me from Minneapolis. I went to Minneapolis, and I looked at them.
They were started by Sharky,
come on down, I'll make you money. And I called them the Road Warriors because I saw the damn movie.
After that Mel Gibson movie a year or two before that, after that, or...
So I called them the Road Warriors, and I told them what to do and how to do it and all that. I went over the damn match, and I said, here's exactly what I want you to do. If you don't do it, then get the fuck out of here. Well, they did exactly what I said, and each match lasted maybe 2 minutes, maybe less, because they couldn't work more than 5 minutes anyway, because they didn't know nothing about nothing. After 6 months or whatever it was, they were working a little bit better. They knew what the hell they were doing. And, God damn it, they went to Minneapolis. So I said, what the hell is that all about? But they all wanted to go back to Vern. Vern was the guy, they wanted to work in Minnesota. They didn't give a shit about the Carolinas, didn't give a shit about Georgia. They wanted to go to Minnesota. And I called up Vern, I said, what the fuck are you doing taking those goddamn guys? Now, they were drawing money by the time they left.
Yeah.
And he just said, well, I need somebody too. So anyway, what was I going to say? So I let it go, and I got other people, that was all. I started a lot of guys, and Road Warriors are two that I started. And before they became the Road Warriors, they didn't know nothing about. There were two guys who were bouncers in the damn beer joint up in Minnesota. They didn't know nothing about wrestling, nothing at all. And I had a lot of guys that were just about as bad or worse. Well, they either made money or they didn't work for me. That's all there was to it.
Was Ricky Steamboat one of your guys, Ole, or he was a Minneapolis
Ricky Steamboat was, later on he was. But he started with somewhere down in Florida, if I remember right. Eddie Graham, I'm not sure what the deal was.
I heard he originally came from Minneapolis, Richard Blood or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't
think he had anything to do with Vern. I don't know if he did or not. Well, maybe he did for Vern. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe
I was wondering, because there seemed to be a lot of guys that came from Minneapolis that never became stars for Vern, but they would go somewhere else, like Steamboat or Flair or Hawk and Animal.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
And
Vern never did a damn thing as far as me. He just they tried to beat the shit out of me. Well, they did beat the shit out of me. And the guy that really beat the shit out of me was Danny Hodge.
He was down. Was he working for Vern at that time, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, a pretty tough guy too.
Oh.
How was your relationship with Vern later on when you were booking?
Oh, fine, no problem. Vern told me I was in Las Vegas. Barnett was there. Well, everybody was there, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, Crockett, Barnett, Funks.
All the guys that were, anyway. Oh, he wanted to know if I wanted to come back. I said, Vern, I'm making more goddamn money out down there in Georgia. I'll never make that up here in Minnesota. And Vern didn't believe it. He says, well, what the hell are you talking about? I said, well, I'm making more than $2,000 a week. How's that? He said, oh, that's a bunch of shit. So I grabbed a hold of Barnett, and he says, Jim, can I ask you a question? And Barnett said, oh, yes, Vern. And he said, Ole told me he's making $2,000 a week or more. He said, oh, he's making at least that much. So Vern just shut up and never said another word to me. But with Barnett, I was making, I made $255,000 a couple of years. Now, who the hell made that kind of money wrestling?
Nobody back then.
No. And so that when Vince McMahon offered me, I'll make $1 million every year, I said he was full of shit. But when I figured it out with the damn pay-per-view and all that kind of crap, yeah, he'd have given me $1 million and he'd give me $10 million. He offered me 10 at first. I said, that's a bunch of shit. So anyhow, I just didn't make all that big money, but I did well enough to be able to retire after 14 years in the business. And I quit because Vince McMahon was running everything, and I didn't want anything to do with him, and he was pissed at me anyway, so I figured, what the hell. So I quit after I wrestled 14 years.
Do you ever cross paths or run into or talk to some of your colleagues from back in the day, Ole? Or?
No, because with Vern, it was just Vern. Vern stretched the hell out of me. Danny Hodge really stretched the hell out of me. Right from there, I went down to, I came over to your dad's. Vern set that up to go to your dad. And I was there for 4 or 5 weeks. I'm not sure what the hell it was. And Vern said he'll give you $300 for sure. And I said, okay. And your dad paid me more than $300 a couple of times. And I said, that's fine, except I want to make more money. That's all there was to it. Your dad had, what's his name, Waldo Von Erich?
Oh, yeah, I think old Waldo was up here then, maybe.
Yep.
I can't remember.
Well, he was there when I was there.
Stasiak, maybe, or...
and you had another guy, the guy that was the head guy, that was the head heel. I forgot what his name was now.
Maybe, I can't remember, Stomper, if he was up here. Or,
that's it. That's who it was, I think it was. Archie Goldie?
Yeah.
So, but I later on had both of them, brought them down to the Carolinas to work for me when I was in the Carolinas, which was 1980 or 81 or 82. I've forgotten even when the hell the years are. And I thought they were the shits. So I just said, hell with it. Goodbye. You had to be as good as I thought you were in order to work for me. That's all there was. And if I didn't like you, you didn't have a job. That's all.
Wahoo McDaniels, did he work for you? Or?
Oh, yeah, he was here for me. He was good, yeah.
Was old Johnny Weaver around back then, or that was maybe past?
Oh, God, no. Johnny Weaver was up in the Carolinas.
So he mostly
I'm
worked
talking about Georgia now. Johnny Weaver wasn't worth a shit as far as I was concerned. But anyway, yeah, Johnny Weaver worked for Jim Crockett. Well, Johnny Weaver and George Becker. George Becker was a 75-fucking-year-old guy that weighed about 35 pounds. Wasn't worth a shit. Couldn't do a fucking thing worth a damn. But he did exactly whatever Crockett told him to do. So Crockett liked him.
Did you ever interact with old George Scott? Or I know my dad had him up here. He kind of started him back in the 50s, but he and Sandy. But he seemed to have a decent run for Crockett, or I think he was booking or something, in maybe the late 70s, 80s, somewhere in there.
Well, you know the thing about George, I hate the son of a bitch. He's dead now, isn't he? I hope.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought a lot of him, and I talked to Crockett, and I said, listen, the guy that had booking was Johnny Weaver.
Yeah.
I said, Johnny Weaver don't know his ass from a hole in the ground, for Christ's sake. I said, let's get somebody else that knows what the hell they're doing, and I suggested he get George Scott. And so they brought him down here, and George was here for, I don't know, a couple of weeks, and he turned out, in my mind, to be a guy that didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. He was I got him booked down here, got him a job down here, and he was pissing all over me and Gene, I thought. And I just said, fuck it, then I ain't gonna go for this shit. And we went to Georgia. And Barnett liked us, and he said, you want to be bookers down here? And I said, you damn right. I said, pay me, and I'll be happy to do the booking.
That was a hotbed for the black wrestlers. Who were some of the main guys in there at the time? Thunderbolt, was he around at that time, or Ray Candy?
Yeah, he was Thunderbolt all the time. And I had to go ahead and kiss his ass every now and then. He not only was a pretty good worker, he was
did some
also
business,
a pretty good wrestler.
Yeah.
I was going to beat the shit out of him. Well, I could beat the shit out of him, but I didn't, because he was good enough to I have to just say, fuck it. I have to kick myself, too, in the ass. But anyway, yeah, he was all right, and he was good. I could tell that he was drawing the people because the house was empty one week and it was filled up the next week. So there you go.
Did you ever work interactively in those days with Watts or Von Erich or some of those other promotions, Ole? Or?
Yeah, I worked with Watts all the time.
How did things go with you and him? Or I guess he took over.
Everything was
Leroy's.
fine. He and I were partners up there in Minnesota. Very short. in a very short period of time. Vern made us partners, and we made a little bit of money for Vern.
I heard he was
made a little money for myself. But that was, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to goddamn be by myself.
Yeah.
And the only time I got with somebody was when I had Gene. And that's because it was important to have a partner down there in the Carolinas.
How was Watts to work with Ole? I heard he was a pretty smart operator.
Yes and no. It depends on what you call a smart operator. When I did the booking, I went home and did it myself.
Yeah.
I never asked anybody to help me. I never asked anybody to come on. I just did it myself. I went back to Barnett and said, "Here's the goddamn deal," and he gave it to this goddamn kid that was his stooge, and that was it. And then everybody got their bookings. But I thought Bill Watts was the same, but he wasn't. They had a goddamn booking with 5 or 6 guys, sometimes 10 guys. They all did the booking. They all goddamn added this and added that. I says, how in the fucking hell can you do that? I sat in on one of their goddamn bookings at one time, and I got so disgusted with the whole thing, I just got my bag. I got the fuck out of there. That's all. I said to Bill, I said, how the hell do you do it? And he says, well, they've got ideas and blah, blah, blah. I said, well, okay. And that was it, but I never did it myself. What the hell? I did my own little goddamn work at home. And I said, here's what I want, here's what I'm going to do, and that's it. What else you want me to say? And Barnett said to me, my boy, you're the only one that's good business, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, fine. Well, we were selling the damn Omni out all the time. And one time in April, the Omni ran on tax day. Barnett said, if you sell that out, I'll know you're doing a good job. And we sold it out again. And he gave me all the credit for it because, I told somebody else something different, but he said, oh, my boy, you've done it again.
How did they squeeze him out of there, Ole? Like I heard.
Well, when Vince McMahon is the one that got him out.
And then he worked for Vince after that, didn't he?
Yep, that's right, he did. Well, he was smarter than me. At the time when Vince was trying to do it, I was running every damn thing. And I made a mistake, that's all. I did something that was stupid. I should have just shut my fucking mouth up. But I didn't know how Vince McMahon could take over every damn thing, and I just said, go fuck yourself. He came down 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and I said, go fuck yourself. And I think I told you already. Then he brought his wife down one time, Linda, and I said, fuck her too. And he got mad at me and said, listen, I didn't give a shit what you said about me, but you can't say it about my wife and me sit still. He says, you'll never work again. And by God, he was right. I never worked again. I didn't know he was taking over everything.
Vern didn't have
anybody to book. I didn't have anybody to book. Bill Watts didn't have anybody to book. Nobody had anybody to book. We were just fucked up. So that was it.
Did you ever
train any guys? The only guy who might have got through that was your dad.
My dad was mostly training his own guys up here. That's where he got guys like Dynamite and Davey and Brett and Benoit and Pillman and that. But were you ever involved? I know I was down there in maybe the 90s, and I saw Jody Hamilton down there, and they had that power plant and all like that. I don't know that.
Jody Hamilton don't know his ass from a hole in the ground. Jody Hamilton did the booking before I got the booking job. I don't know what to say about him. There's just nothing I can say that's worth a shit. He was a guy that worked with a mask, and I guess he was okay. I didn't think he was worth a shit. And when I became the booker, I let Jody Hamilton go, that's all. I had one thing that everybody realized was worth something. I had a TV that was all over the world. So if you want to come to work for me, I got a TV that you can be on, and you can, goddamn it, you can tell Vern to go fuck himself because you'll be on TV up there in Minnesota. You'll be on TV in California. You'll be on TV wherever. And so that was the big deal that I had going for me, that I was on the goddamn biggest TV in the whole world.
Yeah, that was the Superstation.
Yep. So if a guy wanted to work for me, you're going to be on the goddamn TV that's going to take you everywhere. And Bill Watts hated it because the TV came into the Oklahoma and all the places like that. And, everybody hated that damn TV. But there's nothing I could do about it. I said, listen, if I could just limit it to Georgia, I said I'd be glad to do it. But I can't do that because I can't tell the guy what the hell we're going to do with the TV. That's it. It's going all over the world, and you just have to live with it. That's all. And everybody, after, I would imagine, just 4 or 5 months, they had to quit because there was nothing they could do.
Was Barnett tight with Turner? Or
anybody that paid Turner money was tight with Turner. You know, I got to work with Barnett, with Turner, and he said to me, I'm looking to goddamn have a TV that I can have on every damn it 2 or 3 hours on Saturday, blah, 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 blah. I said, well, that's what you got. He said, well, that's what you got, and that's it. When I quit, Barnett didn't know what the hell to do.
Did you ever see, did Ted Turner ever actually go to any of the shows or any of that? I often wondered if he was involved at all, more than just...
Never, nothing at all.
He just
I did everything, and that's the only person you look at. Barnett would tell everybody all kinds of bullshit, but he didn't have a fucking thing to do with it. See, before that, he had Bill Watts for a while. He had Jody Hamilton for a while. He had different guys that were bookers, but the only guy that he kept was me. He kept me for 8 or 9 years or whatever the hell it was.
Ole, would you tell Barnett who you wanted him to book, or would you book
No, I booked him myself. I didn't give a fuck about Barnett.
So you
just forget about it. Barnett didn't have a fucking thing to do with anything that you watched on TV. Nothing. Every once in a while, he might have had a guy that he wanted to put on the TV. Guys that came from Australia, for instance. Name a guy from Australia.
I remember they had a few like old Mark and Curtis and some of them, but they were guys
Mark Lewin.
Mark Lewin, yeah.
Mark Lewin, that's the guy.
Yeah, he was
all right.
Barnett's.
He looked all right, but he did some goofy shit, for Christ's sake. I said, what the fuck is that all about? He got all dressed up, looked like $1 million as he was dressed up. Then he went to the ring, and he acted like he was an idiot. He just did stupid shit that didn't make any sense. I said, here you are, you walk in the building, you got a suit on, you look like $1 million, and you're signing autographs and talking to people like you make some sense, and then you get in the ring and you act like you're an idiot that don't know what day it is. I said, what the fuck kind of shit is that? He says, well, I said, well, I'll tell you what, you're fired, that's all, and that's it. And Barnett never said a word. He just says, oh, my boy. But you see, Barnett wanted to make money, that's all. He didn't give a fuck about anything else. So I was making him money. He was making money, and I was making money. Everybody was making money. And he just said, my boy, you've done it, because I told him we'd sell it out. He said, oh, I don't think so. Well, goddamn, we sold it out. He said, oh, my boy, you've done it again.
The NWA champions, were they still coming in there around that time, or was that already dead?
No, I got rid of all of them because I didn't want them to take all the damn money. We had they had a lot of places they could go, and they didn't have to come here. I just told Barnett, I said, listen, don't book the goddamn NWA champions anymore. And he said, oh, my boy, he says, that looks bad because I'm the one that's the goddamn booker and all that bullshit. And I said, well, maybe so, but I don't want these guys to be here, take all the goddamn money that the other guys were working their ass off to make, and I said, it's no good. It's going to hurt the guys that we're working with. And he said, oh, my boy, you know, and so he just, either that or I put him in a goddamn town that didn't make any difference what the hell they went. Like I'd put him down in Macon or some damn place and let him work there. And they wouldn't like it anyway because it didn't draw any money.
Did the American Dream, Dusty, was he in there around that time? I know he had a bit of a run in Atlanta.
Yeah, Barnett hired him and thought he knew what the fuck he was doing. He hired him and he never talked to me about it. He hired Dusty. Dusty was the absolute fucking shits. Barnett hired him because he was down there in Florida, and Barnett had a piece of Florida.
Oh, yeah, with Eddie Graham and that bunch.
That's right. So Eddie Graham wanted Barnett to hire Dusty, and Dusty was a star down in Florida, but he wasn't a star up here. And I proved it one time when I told Barnett, I said, listen, let's do this. I'll put Dusty Rhodes on TV, let him goddamn do whatever he wants to do, beat a couple of guys, or don't beat anybody, whatever he wants to do, and let him do all the interviews, and I'll put him on a card where it's Dusty Rhodes and who the hell ever, a guy that's a pretty good guy, and let's see if he can draw any money. And Barnett said, oh, my boy, well, you know it's going to work. He's going to do a goddamn good job, blah, 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 blah. Well, Dusty didn't draw 15 cents, for Christ's sake. And he said, well, my boy, it didn't work out very well, did it? I said, no, now get rid of the son of a bitch. He says, well, I guess I have to, and that's it. We got rid of Dusty Rhodes.
Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, they were in there for a stretch. They seemed to be pretty decent.
I like them. I mean, they're two little goddamn guys. Shit, I weighed 270 pounds when I was wrestling them. I said, my God, I'm bigger than both of you guys together. But I put them over, that's all.
Yeah, they said that they had a pretty...
The people, I thought at first that the people were going to go, yeah, who the fuck are these goddamn little twerps in the goddamn ring? And the first time I saw them wrestle was out in some damn town, but it was outside. It was in a ballpark or some damn place. And I thought, we'll see if they're worth a shit. And they went out there, and the people just cheered the shit out of them, and were just so fucking happy. I said, well, I guess that's how much I know.
I know Ricky Morton spoke very well of you, said you were one of the first guys to give him his break.
At one time, I had 100 and some guys working for me.
Yeah, another guy I heard you started was old Lex Luger or whatever. Lex Luger?
Oh, Lex Luger, I know who you're talking about. He's a shit.
Yeah. I don't know that he did any business there. I heard he started with you, though. That's where he kind of got started, and then he worked for Vince. But
well, with Vince, anybody that was a big guy, Vince liked. And
yeah,
I don't remember Lex Luger that well, but I don't think he wasn't what I was crazy about. He might have done okay just to make a goddamn have a couple matches, but not a guy that I wanted to build anything on.
I was going to ask you too, Ole. I was told your son worked for a bit, and then what happened there?
He quit after I don't know how long he wrestled, but a few months, I think it was.
Was that?
And he was an amateur. He was a state champion wrestler.
Yeah.
He could wrestle. He was good.
Yeah.
And I don't think that makes a good professional wrestler.
It doesn't always seem to equate, yeah. Yeah,
he would go right back to what he was doing in amateur wrestling. And I said, that ain't going to work very good. And so he, after, I don't know how many times I might have looked at him, I watched him wrestle maybe, I don't know, a couple of months, I forgot. And he was just an amateur again. He was trying to do takedowns and all kinds of crap. And I said, we don't do that anymore, Quit that bullshit. And he just didn't know what the hell to do, so he finally said, listen, I just got to quit, and he's a lawyer now.
He's probably better off for it, maybe.
Oh, yeah, well, he's making money, and he's doing what he wants to do, and that's all that's important,
Do you ever interact with Arn Anderson or Marty Lundy that much, or was he sort of after the fact? Or
Arn Anderson, I just saw him in the dressing room, and I looked at him, I said, listen, how about I'll make you my brother? And he said, yeah. He wrestled a lot like Gene wrestled.
Yeah, he seemed to be a pretty decent worker, old Arn. And I remember that other guy, I knew him a bit. He said you helped him a lot, was Tully Blanchard.
Tully Blanchard?
Yeah, he was teaming with Arn for a while there.
I like Tully, yeah, he was all right.
Yeah, I know his dad started for my dad back in the
Yep.
50s, Joe Blanchard. He was a football player up here with Kiniski and Wilbur Snyder and that bunch. They all started around that same time, in about 52 or something like that. But I know Tully was, I think, born up here, But another guy that had pretty good things to say about you was DiBiase's kid, Ted DiBiase. I'm not sure if he worked for you or if he...
Yeah, he worked for
me. And Valentine was another one who spoke well of you. He sort of started up here, and then I think he had a bit of kind of got his career launched
Johnny's
down.
Son, you mean?
Johnny's son, Greg, yeah.
Yeah. The guys that I liked, and I liked the guys because they listened to me. If they didn't listen to me, I didn't like them. So it's simple. And I said, listen, I'll make you money if you listen to what I say. If you don't listen to what I say, you won't make any money, and you'll be fucked, and I'll have to fire you and get you out of here. I said, I'll give you all the credit in the world, but I said, I want you to listen to what I say. You did what I told you to do, and it was okay.
Yeah.
Everything was fine. If you didn't do what I told you to do, and whatever you did didn't work, then it was your goddamn fault, and I'd bury your ass.
I knew a lot of guys that worked for you, and they said you were very You know, there was no bullshit. You know, it was pretty straight up. You know, he'd tell you exactly what you wanted them to do, and there was no games, so there was no hidden agendas.
Well, no,
or
as far
bullshit.
as I'm concerned, there wasn't. You know.
No. And
Barnett walked around and told people all kinds of bullshit, and then when he got done walking around, I ran on the same guys, and I said, listen, don't pay any attention to what he says. Who gives a fuck what he says? I said, you got to remember to do what I tell you to do, and if you do what I tell you to do, I'll watch your match, and if your match you don't do exactly what I told you to do, then I'll goddamn kick your ass. And as I say, Mark Lewin and a few different guys that were so over with Barnett thought they could do anything they wanted to do, and I just said, no, you can't, goodbye. And I had no idea if Barnett was going to keep me or get rid of me, too. But he never got rid of me, and he said, oh, my boy, you've done a wonderful job. Well, good. Well, everybody thought I was sucking his dick or some damn thing. I said, listen, the money I'm making, I would suck your dick. But anyway, I never had nothing to do with Barnett. He came to the matches very rarely and tried to make him look like he was a big superstar and all that shit. I said, listen, do whatever you want to do with him, but when it comes 7 o'clock, do what I tell you to do, and that's it. Goodbye. And Barnett quit coming to the matches. Guys would go down to the office and bullshit with him a little bit, but even he quit all that after a while. And so the only guy they had to worry about was me. He'd had all these bookers before that hadn't done a very good job. That's why he thought he needed to be there, I guess. I said, if I don't make money with you, I'm not going to make any money either, and I don't want that. I said, I want to make money, and I know you want to make money. So we both have the same goal in mind. Now, if you listen to what I tell you to do and you do exactly what I tell you to do, I said, we'll make money. And I came up with all the finishes for anybody that was in the main event. Everything, it was all my fucking deal, you know. So, anyway. Then the problem came in 1984, 85, whatever it was, when Vince McMahon, told me, I'll make you a lot of goddamn money, and I said, go fuck yourself.
Bob here. I've got a list here, Bruce and Ole, of a whole bunch of guys, and I'd like to ask Ole to give us one or two words about that person, if I could start. Bruce?
After 50 years, I've forgotten most of these guys.
If any of these guys do come to mind, just answer, I guess.
Okay, Vern Gagne.
There's no two words for Vern. He was a hell of a wrestler. He was a hell of an amateur, and he did a good job.
Jim Cornette.
God damn, he's a faggot, son of a bitch.
Okay, Eddie Graham.
I liked Eddie. I worked for him a little while, and I thought he did a good job. I thought he knew what the hell he was doing. How's that?
Great. Bill Watts.
I liked him at first. I still like him as far as that's concerned, but he didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground.
Okay. Jack Briscoe.
He didn't know anything about anything.
Yeah. Ric Flair.
Ric Flair's an asshole.
Hulk Hogan.
He worked for me for about a week or maybe no more than 7 days. And he was the absolute shit. He was a big kid, looked good and all that, but he didn't know his fucking ass from a hole in the ground. When I got him, because of Gary Hart, I thought he knew what the fuck he was doing. And Gary Hart said he's a great wrestler. Oh, yeah, he's wonderful. I got so tired of him, I said, listen, that's enough. I'll send you to New York. I called up Vince McMahon. I said, I got a guy you're really going to like. And by God, they did like him. The old man didn't like him, but the kid did. The old man thought he was a shits, but the kid thought he was going to make a lot of money with the guy. And they did make a lot of money with him.
A lot of memories and a lot of old names that I enjoyed hearing Ole's take on everyone from Gene to Lars to Vern to Jim Barnett and all those guys. There's a lot of legendary people, and I just like to thank Ole for joining us. I certainly enjoyed hearing his perspectives, and God bless. Take care.
You're more than welcome. Thank you much.